you found yourself. Found yourself without a place of belonging, without the strands of connection that once lit your path. You welcomed the void, your shadow eclipsing all that you once stood in awe of. You lost those lights that stood by your side. You lost yourself, broken into pieces, scattered across eternity. Where do you begin, and where do you end? You had so many chances. Chances to succeed. Chances to change course. Chances to see and be seen. 13 lifetimes. And you didn't live in even one. You lost everything to a bunch of children. All those years wasted, living in the past when you could have lived. You once looked to the future with hunger and ambition in your gaze. Now, all of it is gone. Does it satisfy you? This empty ending you've arrived at? You were never the child of destiny.
I hadn't much time to write in this old thing in years. My last entry was dated the day I first arrived here in this land of departure from Scala ad Caelum. My graduation and awarding of the title of Master came with a heavy burden, and along with mourning the loss of my friends, it left me feeling alone. The land was empty and sparse, but I had soon moved in. I hadn't really considered this world my home. It was just somewhere I was living. The life in this world was simply lost. Now, that may be in part due to my grief. Vidar, Vala, Vale, Bragi, Ver. I miss them terribly. Apologies. It appears I've gotten off track. My mind, even at my age, tends to wander. Now, the reason I've opened up this dusty old journal is because of my students. The three of them, the ones I had fully trained, Terra and Aqua, and Xehanort's disciple which he had passed on to me, Ventus, had come to speak with me. The conversation was about a training assignment I had given them, focusing on analyzing an opponent's movements to better understand a potential opportunity for a counterstrike, as well as how to move at a blinding speed to attack any adversary in rapid succession. I believe it was Ventus who decided to call it the shotlock technique. Where in the realm's name he came up with that name, I have no idea. The three had left saying that they would soon be home, and it was there that I had realized something rather important. This place. It is my home. It hadn't felt so for the many years I spent here in the oversized hallways and vacant rooms, but it was them. Terra and Aqua and later Ventus. Their laughter, their bonds, even the moments where they would become frustrated with each other and come to me like a child would come and talk to their parents. It had brought life and light back into this world. Those three have helped make this place a home. They've helped to make this world a home. No, our home. Perhaps Master Odin knew this, and it is why he sent me to live here upon my acquiring the rank of Master, along with my Keyblade. That I may never know. But what I do know is this, and perhaps I can leave a message for them in this dusty old tomb for those three to find at a later date. Terra, Aqua, Ventus. You three have helped bring light into this world, and light back into my life, and I will be forever grateful for that. I know you three will be able to keep the realm of light safe from the darkness, but never forget this. The land of departure will always be your home. And no matter what happens in the future, know I will always be there for you, my children. May your hearts be your guiding keys.
The land of departure was always home for Ventus. Or at least for as long as he could remember. Or maybe just for 4 years. Was it ever his home? Ven groaned, pacing his room. Since his return, being in his room always felt a little off. It must be a side effect of spending the last decade inside someone else's heart, he mused internally. He certainly was in Sora's heart for far longer than this room was ever his. This room was neat for the most part. Sora's never was. Looking out the window, Ven felt like he should be seeing sand and waves under a clear sky, not steep cliffs that climbed so high they disappeared into the clouds. It should have felt more familiar than it did. This was home, right? Despite knowing he never belonged within Sora, despite being glad that he was finally himself again, Ventus couldn't help but feel displaced now that he was back in his own body. Heck, he even had memories of Sora's adventures that seemed to often outweigh his own at times. Having those memories made the holes in Ventus's own feel even heavier. He couldn't help but wonder, who was he before? Sometimes the vaguest of memories from before arriving at the land of departure would dance in the back of his psyche, as a reminder of what he couldn't recall. He would try to reach those thoughts, but they would often disappear entirely, or worse, lead to a splitting headache. What if he was an entirely different person, especially before Vanitas was split from his heart? Ah, yes, Vanitas. Vanitas had disappeared after the last battle in the Keyblade graveyard, a fact that made Ventus rather wary. Not that he distrusted Vanitas, though to be clear, he did distrust Vanitas. It just felt like another part of him that was missing. The two of them supposedly shared a heart, yet Vanitas always had a confidence in him, one that screamed he knew exactly who he was. Frequently, his last words would rattle in Ven's mind. "What I am is darkness." Another reminder of just what was missing, he supposed. The pacing ceased as a huge sigh sounded within the room. Ventus knew he shouldn't be fretting over these things, as if out of muscle memory. Funny that he could still have muscle memory after being outside of his body for a decade. His eyes immediately drifted to his desk. There was a framed picture propped up against the books there. It was small and a bit dusty now, but the thought of it alone warmed his heart enough to settle his racing thoughts. It was of him with Terra and Aqua. It wasn't taken on any special day. In fact, the three of them were finishing up training when they decided to take the photo. The sweat on their foreheads and damp, tousled hair were evidence enough of such. Sudden emotions caused his hands to tremble slightly as he picked up the frame, clutching it as if it may shatter. But it never would. Never could. Even if it did, his bond with those two would remain unshakable. Ventus suddenly felt a little silly for his internal turmoil. Why was he bothered about who he was in the past? He knew who he was now, and he knew the people closest to him were there for him. If his past memories started to hurt him again, then Terra, Aqua, and all his new friends would be there to help him out. They'd find Sora too. Ven was confident in that. Then he could finally talk to Sora about their shared memories and create new ones together, now that they're both cognizant. A loud door slamming shook Ventus from his thoughts. After the initial shock, he laughed to himself for a moment. Terra never did know how to enter a building quietly. Aqua must have been with Terra. Ventus figured as much when she called out, "Ven?" She hardly had a chance to finish her single syllable before Terra boomed out, "We brought takeout!" "I'll be right there." A grin fixed itself on Ven's lips as he placed the photo back down on his desk. He sped out of the room with a force that rivaled the wind itself. The food was warm, after all. The land of departure was home. Always was and always will be, so long as the three of them were here.
Waking up takes more effort than Vanitas would care to admit. Slowly, he reorients himself with the world around him. The pounding in his head is the first thing he notices. The shattered remnants of Ventus's toy keyblade lay scattered where he threw them, right beside the now unconscious body of Aqua. Vanitas would laugh if the motion didn't feel like another blade colliding against his skull. Instead, he spares a fragment of energy to simply scoff at the sight. Pathetic, he thinks to himself. If she's still around after this, I'll finish her off for good. Eventually, he struggles his way to his feet. A corridor of darkness opens to swallow him up and expel him from the world. Vanitas appreciates the temporary sense of weightlessness within, letting the void carry him forward of its own senseless volition. It wasn't all that dissimilar to the rest of his travels thus far. He'd been moving with no real sense of purpose, simply opting to traverse the lanes between until he found worlds that were empty enough to flood with darkness of his own making. He found that most of them fit the bill. Doubtful the next one will be any different. Eventually, the darkness tires of him. Vanitas finds himself spat upon the shores of a beach, a vision of vibrant palms flooding his senses. The sand is soft, unlike the cracking plains of his desert residence, and it catches him almost gently as he tumbles unceremoniously from the closing portal. The sudden motion ignites the fire in his skull again, and Vanitas grips the sides of his helmet, ripping it off in one sudden movement. Immediately, the darkness of his visor gives way to the warm hues of a sunset, clouds of orange and red inking their way across the sky. Seabirds and soft waves ring in his ears. The ocean breeze drifts across his face, and Vanitas is taken aback by how it seems to soothe rather than sting. For a fleeting moment, it's as if the corridor's weightlessness is back. There's an odd tranquility about this place, a serenity that balances itself on the precipice of emptiness. And for once, it's as if the void around Vanitas is bigger than the one inside of him. The stillness wraps itself around his chaos like gauze to a wound, a salve for a scab that only seemed to keep bleeding. Somehow, he doesn't feel like flinching. It confounds Vanitas that he feels the closest thing to peace here of all places, an insignificant nothing of a world, just clumps of sand trying to stay afloat within an endless expanse of ocean. Just like all the others, this one isn't special. They're all so small, Vanitas concludes. It's a simple, pitiful fact, unchanging and unremarkable as the worlds themselves. The thought makes his heart twist oddly anyway, and he scowls at the sudden sensation. He hated it when his heart felt things. Like dealing with pangs of Ventus's emotions wasn't annoying enough on its own. He grits his teeth and stares down the waning sun on the horizon. Why am I here? Why should I care about this place? Why should I care about any of it? It's not like any of it truly matters.
Come on, Sora. I'll race you home. Oh, that's not fair, Riku. You got a head start.
Shrill voices draw Vanitas' attention away from the horizon. In the distance, he spots the outline of two small boys in boats, frantically rowing their way towards a larger island in the distance. Inexplicably, the sight makes Vanitas' heart twist even more. Home, huh? He had that once, he thinks, prior to existence. Prior to being plucked from the depths of consciousness and given a form and name he never asked for. Vanitas watches the two boys scramble towards the mainland, the dark-haired one of the two lagging a short ways behind. This time, he finally does laugh at the sight. You're almost there, Ventus. Soon, we'll be home too.
What is a home? Luxord asks himself. It's simply the only question he can muster upon such a marvelous defeat. As he looks up into the air, watching the final pitch-black speckles of his own darkness fly up and take their leave from his mortal body, he can feel himself beginning to lose consciousness. It hurts just a bit, the act of fading away. Of course, he can easily attribute some of it to the thorough beating he just took from the Hero of Light. But there's a different pain that comes from the very essence of his existence fading away. Like crackling dry skin, what he imagines a croissant must feel like in the oven, its flaky crust drying and fluttering off. Leave it to me to imagine baking pastries in my final moments, Luxord thinks, right as his body fully disappears and he loses consciousness. Mentally floating in some blank, spacey void, Luxord continues his initial train of thought. When Luxord thinks of home, things come up a bit short and hazy. His memories aren't the same as they used to be, quite literally, as they only span from now to the time when he first joined the organization. He remembers waking up in some strange town, which he would eventually come to know as Radiant Garden, and eventually being cornered by a curious yet vexatious Xigbar. When pressured to give the details of his awakening, and quickly coming up short, the other man immediately recruited him into the organization. Luxord would like to say he was tricked into joining, but unfortunately, the state he was in upon waking up warranted much enthusiasm towards the prospect of the group's wicked camaraderie, not helping that Xigbar was and is, in a strange way, a rather charming fellow. And he joined the cult with little hesitation, a decision he would later come to regret. Well, sort of. Not without mixed feelings. Was the organization a home? He thinks to himself. Surely it mustn't have been. After all, the things that happened there and the purpose of the group was anything but cozy. Murder, betrayal, fanaticism, all sorts of awful things were happening there. But then he remembers the occasional moments of solace shared with the other members. He thoroughly enjoyed the rare chances he got to hang out with Roxas or any of the other younger members of the group, who, despite their nothingness, still retained a delightful sense of youth and innocence that Luxord found himself appreciating. And he remembers hanging out with his fellow adults, gossiping with Larxene, late-night card games with Xigbar, discussing shared interests with Xaldin. Despite all that happened, Luxord finds himself wishing the others well and hoping they're currently in a good place. Perhaps, he concludes, maybe a home can be a place that is forged by someone rather than outright given to them. And a home, both created and gifted, can bring both good and bad. What a complex concept to wrap his non-existent head around. Suddenly, amidst his sea of thought, Luxord can feel himself being pulled back into some sort of existence. Back into the organization? He wonders to himself. But much to his surprise, he suddenly opens his eyes and wakes up on a warm, fuzzy carpet. Quickly, he pulls himself up. He looks around and realizes that he's in a cozy living room. Standing up and off the ground, he walks over and glances out the window of the room. Luxord sees a huge city skyline covered in cold snow, but he, of course, is safe inside of the homey building. Suddenly, Luxord hears footsteps and whips his head around. A teenager with red and blue eyes is standing in the doorway, mouth agape. Upon meeting eyes with the boy, Luxord's memories begin flooding back. Of the boy, Yozora, and the life he lived before the organization. The city he loves, and the job he loves, watching over the young master. Yozora runs over and envelops him in a big hug. "You're home," Yozora says. And Luxord, no, Ludor, he remembers his name now, smiles. Now this is home. He knows it for sure.
Dilan woke and, for a moment, they forgot they were finally, actually, home again. Furthermore, it had been at least 10 years since they were last here. When they were first told, it had felt strange to them. Had it really been that long? Upon awakening the first time, they had been unstable, as if a part of them had still been lingering behind in the world that never was. Now, although they were eager to get outside again, all they could do was lay there and think about the dream they just woke from. For at night, they often dreamt of home as it once had been. Today would be the first time Dilan ventured outside, and they were both elated and worried. They hesitantly placed a hand on the door that led outside, and nearly held their breath upon opening it. A part of them expected certain places to still exist, but knew it was possible that the world had moved on without them. They wanted to know for certain, yet at the same time, wanted to remain in the blissful ignorance of the past. The door slowly swung open, letting in the light of the midday sun. What greeted them was far more than what they had imagined. Things were gone, as if they had never existed. In their mind's eye, Dilan could see everything that was no longer there. They knew it by sight, by touch, and by memories that seeped in. Parts of towers stood, their balcony sheared off. Other places had no trace at all left of what once was. New shop facades made of whatever scraps could be found dotted some of the walls. Arches were still standing, but looked as if they had been cut neatly in two. The once fanciful facades worn down to nothing. Statues that used to dot the fountains looked as if entire parts had been plucked off. This was wrong. Were they dreaming? Or was this a terrible nightmare, shaped by the ghost of a world they once knew? The door shut softly behind him as he retreated back into his room. Dilan collapsed onto the bed. They wept for those they had left behind, for those that were not here to greet them. He cried his heart out, guilt weighing heavily upon him, regrets quickly joining the long mournful chorus. Hours passed that felt like endless eternities, till his tears could run no more. A knock on the door disrupted his thoughts. Dilan sat upright, not certain if they wanted to answer or not. Ienzo opened the door but said nothing. Alias stood next to them. Had the two of them somehow heard Dilan mourning what had been lost? They looked up at the two of them, unsure whether to say anything at all. He wanted to speak, but he could not bring himself to do so. Alias was wearing a look of concern that quickly shifted to one of comfort. Striding in, they sat down on the bed next to them, placing a hand on their shoulder. Ienzo watched from the doorway, not certain if they wanted to join them. None of this was your fault. You did not know, Alias comforted in a soft voice. Dilan nodded, persistent guilt still weighing on his mind. How were they to atone for this? It was certain that nothing could be undone. All they could do for now was help rebuild the world as it stood. Perhaps that would help atone for their past actions. That reminds me, Ienzo remarked in a soft tone. We found a letter and a package addressed to you. Would you like me to fetch them? It can wait, Dilan replied. Though they were intrigued, they would rather wait a few days to process all they were feeling. For now, they were going to bask in this moment. Tomorrow could wait. They could make this place home, even if it took them some time.
Another chime of laughter drifts in through the open window, intermingling with rhythmic chopping of potatoes and sizzling oil turning onion rings golden. Not quite as golden as the sunlight outside, but hardly anything can compete with the permanent sunset of this world. It's a shame Isa associates so many unpleasant memories with that hue. Twilight Town is really trying its best to win him over. It's hardly at fault for his faltering heartbeat whenever he catches his own orange-tinted reflection. Lee has had to reassure him several times that his eyes are sea green again. It doesn't matter. Lee's friends want to be here, so here they are. Right now, while Isa's preparing his father's roast recipe, the triplets and their guardian are working on the garden in the backyard, ripping out generations of weeds to make room for flowers. Judging from the occasional complaining, they might as well be hunting an emerald serenade. Lee especially has been struggling to find an optimally lit spot for his mother's sunflowers. Well, as long as he sticks to garden tools and forgoes the pyre method. Isa can't help but smirk to himself, blindly reaching for the condiment shelf. His fingers close around something of wrong shape and weight, and he's left staring at the stick of butter he grabbed instead of the salt shaker. A half-melted stick of butter that is definitely not meant to turn an unrefrigerated assortment of spice jars into a slip-and-slide. Calm, Berserker, and turn the stove down. A heavy sigh later, buttery remains are liquefying in the hot pan, while Isa searches for a rag and dish soap to clean up the rest with. Of course they're not near the sink. Why would they be? It makes so much more sense to leave them in the living room for potential spills. Just like the bowls that some days get stored in the same cupboard as the cereal boxes, or the mugs stacked either around the coffee maker or on the highest shelf where only one of 5 inhabitants can reach them. Breathe out. Long inhale. Hold. Breathe out. Again. It's the same with the decorations around this place. With the furniture, with him more than anything else. Nothing has a defined space yet. Just temporary placements as they try to arrange things in ways that are handy for everyone. It's been almost a year, but he's still waiting for a sense of home, of having settled in. Not just in these walls, but in his own bones. A world of night replaced by permanent sunset, with the complete absence of a moon, has been a sensory nightmare. And there might still be an orange-tinted void around his weakly beating heart. None of these sensations loan themselves to warm conversations, no matter how often Lee tries to initiate them. He's been told that he needs to give himself more time, but a decade in the castle never made it feel like home, so... Hey, Isa. Oh, that smells amazing. Thank you, Xion, he mutters, eyes landing on the girl running in behind him. Her work pants and gloves are covered in dirt and loose leaves as she opens the fridge, and a couple smudges on her blank face speak volumes of her struggles. We found a spot for the sunflowers, she chimes excitedly as she grabs some cold soda pops. They're gonna grow so tall. Is that so? He chuckles despite himself, softly returning the drive-by hug on her way out. I propose we call them all Axel Jr. then. She must be positively beaming with how loud she laughs at that. You just want payback for him naming the cactus Syx. Touché. Now run along. Dinner will be ready soon. Got it. With a quiet warmth filling up his chest, Isa subtly follows her towards the backyard, observing the small family out there sharing cold treats. While he aches to join them, he needs to finish his duties first. Even if he can't settle down himself, he's hopefully helping the kids to do so, by providing them with consistent meals and a safe, clean place to sleep. Or by taking care of their applications to get enrolled in class with Roxas' friends next summer. At least all the paperwork and organizing feels familiar. It doesn't really matter in the end. The kids want him here, so here he is. And who knows? Maybe he'll be able to see Xion's real face once he no longer sees Xehanort in the mirror.
Here's your 3 sea salt ice creams, Axel. See? I got it memorized. The ice cream seller, Greg, hands the ice cream to Axel. That's great. I sure hope so after always coming here. You basically get my paycheck. Axel chuckles, taking the sweet treats. As he hands over the money for it, he notices a sign that says, Home is where your heart is. You like the sign? Home is where your heart is. It's a saying that always spoke to me. Greg smiles. Thanks again, Axel. See you tomorrow. Say hello to your friends for me. You're welcome. You got it, the redhead says. Axel gets lost in thought as he walks to the tower. Home is where your heart is, huh? Well, where is home if you don't have a heart? Do you not get a home? Is it anywhere you want? Some of these thoughts feel above my pay grade. The ex-heads just tell me to do the icky jobs. I had a purpose when I joined, but now I feel like I'm just going through the motions. Axel eats his ice cream next to Roxas and Xion on the clock tower. He looks over at his friends, smiling. They chat about the random things in their lives. That sign still plagues me. Well, if I did have one, this is where my home would be. Right here with my friends. Where did these complicated thoughts come from? Man, life was so much easier when I was a kid. I had easier worries, like coming up with a catchphrase. Axel reflects on a simpler time from his past. A younger Lee looks at himself in the mirror in his room. He points his finger at his reflection. My name's Lee, remember it? He shakes his head while his arms fall to his sides. That's so lame, come on, Lee. You want people to remember you. You need a hook. The red-haired youth raises his head, looks at himself in the mirror, and then puts his hand up against his reflection. In school, Lee had felt like a nobody. He had no friends. So he spiked up his hair higher than anyone and got brighter clothes to stand out. In his mind, he's the sun that needs to shine. My name's Lee, committed to memory, the frustrated boy huffs. That works once. I can do better. He points forward with gusto. My name is Lee, don't wear it out. His forehead knocks against the mirror. Arrgh, why am I like this? Lee runs to his bed and cries. I'll never come up with something cool, then I'll be forgotten and no one will be my friend. The first day of school comes and Lee arrives. In the hallway, a blue-haired kid walks up to Lee. Hi there, I'm Isa. I like your hair, the blue-haired boy says. Oh, hi, I'm Lee. Got it memorized? I like your hair too. Hearing the words that come out of his mouth, a big grin appears on Lee's face. That's good, you should keep that, Isa says, chuckling. Well, if you think it's good, sure. Lee smiles, realizing his fears were nothing to worry about. A smile appears on Axel's face as his memory finishes. Good times, Axel says, biting into his sea salt ice cream. What's that, Axel? Xion asks. It's nothing. Just remembering simpler times, Axel responds. I hope we can have them too. Yeah, same. Roxas nods. Xion agrees. They finish their ice cream and check the sticks to see if anyone was a winner. Nope. All losers. A lot has happened since those moments on the clock tower eating ice cream, and I don't think anyone is going to forget me now. Axel heads over to Roxas on the clock tower and sits down. His eyes catch sight of Xion in her new outfit as she sits down next to him. The three of them watch over Twilight Town as the sun sets. Isa brings them sea salt ice cream, and then Hainer, Pence, and Olette join them as well. Axel enjoys the ice cream while looking over at all his friends. No more icky jobs, no more being bossed around by a loser. Just good times with friends. Looks like even when I was a nobody, I always had a heart, because my home has always been with them.
I'm home. With all the grace of a drunk ballerina, Roxas stumbled into his dimly lit apartment. He was scarcely able to see over the mountain of groceries in his arms, but somehow he elbowed the door shut and toed his shoes off. There was a metallic clatter as his house keys met the ceramic tile of the entryway floor, completely missing the key dish. Whatever, he could pick those up later. Right now, he had a mission: deliver this motherload of groceries to the kitchen. Each meandering step down the narrow hallway made the world teeter and totter, the bundle in his arms seeming to have a life of its own. A myriad of DIY popsicle stick frames hung from the walls around him, the smiling faces of his photographed friends cheering him on as he staggered by. There was also the ever-stoic, not-smiling face of Isa, pictured alongside the Twilight Town Anger Management Club, which in fact seemed to mock him as he nearly tripped on a stray cable. Luckily, he caught himself on a nearby lamp, though at the expense of a lone piece of fruit that was now rolling away. At least he hoped it was just a lone piece of fruit. Cheeks burning with frustration, Roxas paused for a moment to catch his breath. Somewhere in the back of his head, a tiny voice that sounded a bit like Xion chirped, "Why not just take 2 trips?" To which he could only roll his eyes. Also somewhere in the back of his head, a tiny voice that sounded an awful lot like Axel fired back, "2!" To which he could only chuckle. Wait, no, he absolutely could not chuckle right now. He tried to stop the shudder running through his shoulders, but it was too late. At the slight motion, the pile of bags sprang to life once more. And so, with a grunt, Roxas sprang to action once more. He heaved himself off the wall and continued his strange dance toward the kitchen, weaving through the obstacle course that was his living room floor. A skateboard, an unpaired sock, an extreme sports magazine he'd borrowed from Rai. His muscle memory guided him through the minefield while he fought to keep the ever-shifting mass upright in his arms. It wasn't until he felt the abrupt crunch of a seashell beneath his foot that he paused, horror freezing him mid-step. For the first time since moving in, he regretted not buying any shelves for his apartment. Stupid groceries! Roxas growled out, hopping on one foot while shaking the fragments of the shell from his sock. He gripped the bags tighter, eyes burning with fury. My friend gave me that! But as much as he wanted to launch the bags and bash their contents to a grimy pulp, he cringed at the thought of being lectured by the fairy godmother at the next Twilight Town Anger Management Club meeting. Maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe he could glue the seashell back together. Or better yet, maybe Ven and Olette could do it for him. Those two were always showing up uninvited for spontaneous sleepovers. It was only a matter of time before... Rip! The sound wrenched him from his thoughts. Oh no, the bags, they were starting to tear. Roxas stiffened. The kitchen was only a short sprint away. He could practically smell the rotting pineapple sitting atop his counter. Brushing away thoughts of, I should probably throw that away, and I can't, it was a gift from Hainer. Roxas took a deep breath. It was now or never. With an intensity matched only by a rooftop battle in the rain, he bolted. What little he could see of the room around him was a blur, shapes flying past too quickly to comprehend. A bag slipped from his arms, colors flashing by in his periphery. He couldn't stop now. Another bag. He could pick it up later. Something spilled out of the bottom of yet another bag, and another. He was almost there. Made it! Roxas cried out as he slam-dunked his bag onto the counter. A reckless grin broke out across his face, and he let out a proud huff. 2 trips, please. And yet... the smile on his face turned stony as he eyed the single bag on the counter. Brows scrunched, he took a peek over his shoulder. Behind him, littered about the floor like a confetti spell gone wrong, were his groceries.
Xion took in a deep breath before letting it go a second later, gazing at the reflection in her bathroom mirror. You got this, Xion. It's not like this is going to be the end of the world. I mean, you fought Heartless after all. The knock on her door made the girl give a squeak of alarm, shocking her from her thoughts. Xion! It's Kairi. We're almost ready to go. Are you ready? Coming! The clone girl called back, quickly finishing up before making her way out the door. Running through the hall, she met up with Kairi in the living room, who was there with Naminé and Olette. The other girls looked over with smiles. Finally! Olette put her arm over Xion's shoulder. I can't believe I get to take you on your first shopping trip. You'll look so cool. Over on the other side of the couch, Naminé raised a hand. I think it's all of us taking Xion shopping. Also, it would be my first time too. Xion watched as Olette blushed in embarrassment. Oh, right, sorry. Let's go, you 3, Kairi said. Those clothes aren't going to buy themselves. The quartet quickly hurried down the street, Xion watching the sight of everyone going about their days, buying groceries and only occasionally blushing over a dog being walked or the local cat begging for pets. Still, at the end of the day, the girls made it to the clothing store. Xion felt her stomach twist, her nerves starting to get the better of her. Would they notice she was different? Would they know something was wrong with her? Did she even belong at all? Xion? Alette's voice broke through the haze of nervous thoughts. Are you okay? The clone turned to look at Alette, forcing a smile onto her face. Yeah, I'm okay. It's just, my first shopping trip and all. I'm just not sure it would look good or not. She hoped that her answer would be enough to stop them from worrying. Xion? Kairi asked. Can we talk? She turned to Naminé and Alette. We'll see you inside. The other girls nodded and headed inside. Kairi, But Xion was cut off. Is this about what happened with the organization and how they treated you? Kairi asked with a deceptively calm voice. It was clear, though, to Xion that the girl was upset. The raven head felt painfully see-through, looking down at her shoes instead of answering. Xion, you're like a sister to me, Kairi continued. I don't care what others think. You're as much a real person as I am, and you're a girl, not an it. You'll look amazing in whatever you wear, and if anybody says otherwise, they'll need to get through me, Naminé, and Alette. Xion felt herself go quiet for a moment. Then, she abruptly collapsed into the redhead's arms, feeling the tears spill out, letting herself release all that stress. After a while, she pulled back, wiping her eyes. Thanks, Kai. I needed that. Good. A warm smile spread over her sister's face before planting a kiss on her forehead. Now, let's go get you something special.
She had moved around more than she realized, Kairi thought to herself one night after training with Aqua in the Land of Departure. The breeze was cool and the atmosphere pleasant, a different sky hanging above her head. She swung her legs while sitting on the edge of a cliff idly, unknowingly mirroring almost exactly the same position Ven did around 13 years prior, even down to forgetting a blanket. The stars were shining brightly tonight, with the absence of the world's moon. The night was surprisingly loud on the summit of the training mountain as well, or Mons Exerciti in the native language of this world. Not that Kairi was aware anyone else lived here other than those at the castle. She'd have to ask Terra about it later. Home. Where is it? She asked, testing the question on her tongue unbidden. Where did that come from? It sounded strange, asking such a question. Surely, the answer was obvious. At the moment, home was the Land of Departure. She was training with Aqua to become stronger so she could join Riku in searching for Sora and Quadratum when he'd left just yesterday and she wasn't able to join. Except, it wasn't so simple, was it? She picked up a stone and held it up to the sky. Starlight twinkled, illuminating the edges of the pebble as she turned it around in her hand. For a long time, she had considered Destiny Islands to be her home. She had grown up there, of course, along with Sora and Riku, happily going about her days without a care in the world. Without a care in the world, or for the worlds she had inhabited previously. Without a care for her own memories, which, despite sleeping away for an entire year of her life in stasis digging through her memories, which were no closer to resurfacing than they were before. She knew Ven's pain. That memory of how Radiant Garden fell flashed through her mind again, and in an effort to dispel it, she suddenly leapt to her feet. Throwing the pebble into the sky, she rapidly summoned her Keyblade and sent a thunderspell forth, shattering the stone and scattering dust across the cliffside. She fell back down onto her back, defeated. Her Keyblade dismissed itself again, no longer needed. Training had been going well, and Aqua's training style was refreshing, but there was something missing, and it frustrated her. She remembered that she had a grandma in Radiant Garden. She remembered the story Grandma told her too. But even though Aqua had recounted the story of how she'd met her and how she had likely inherited the Keyblade multiple times, Kairi couldn't remember it at all. Not the flowers she gave Aqua, not the unversed that attacked, and not Mickey who fought with Aqua to defeat them. Am I cursed to not remember? Kairi asked the stars above, wishing not for the first time recently she had a photographic memory. Camelot Woods with Merlin and Lee, Traverse Town with Sid, Yuffie, and the gang, even the world that never was when Axel kidnapped her. Kairi shuddered at that last one. She had, at one point or another, called all of these places home. Even Twilight Town, for a few hours at least. Perhaps, being the nomad she apparently was, where home wasn't so important. Perhaps what she was really afraid of was forgetting the people closest to her, like she had forgotten Sora for a year. Afraid that she'd forget them, and they'd forget her, and the worlds would keep turning like nothing had ever happened in the first place. Gone, like the shooting stars that danced briefly through the sky. A raindrop fell from the cloudless sky. Then another, and another, until Kairi realized that they were tears rather than raindrops, and that just made her cry harder. With everyone leaving on their own missions, she felt so useless and alone. Why? She asked the sky. She lay there for a long time, thinking of her friends who were far away. Eventually, her tears slowed. They aren't out there this time, are they? She asked softly, wiping her face. Do we always share the same sky, even when apart? She didn't know, and her heart felt rather muddled. She would just have to get stronger, so she could return home.
This looks like a good learning experience. Riku stared up into the sky, reflecting upon these words that he learned from his old home. When he was 7 years old, some of the older kids of the Destiny Islands told Riku an old saying that was passed through many generations. They showed him how to climb the trees, collect coconuts, and taught him about endurance through races on their small island. Riku truly appreciated them for this. After the year he spent learning, Riku had gained a lot of experience spending time with the older children of the islands. He felt it was the perfect time to pass that experience along to Sora and Kairi. Sora, Kairi, I want to show you what the older kid showed me last year, Riku said with his hands on his hips, looking down from a rock to his two friends. Follow me! Riku then ran off to the trees as Sora and Kairi looked at each other with excitement. He showed the younger kids how to climb the trees, even helping them when they felt like they were falling by grabbing a hold of their feet. Don't worry, I got you! After climbing on the trees, he showed them how to collect and open coconuts, as well as the racing course on the small island. Once Sora had learned how to run the course, he challenged Riku and Kairi to a race in which he finished in last place. Aw, I lost. How could I lose? Sora said disappointedly, and Kairi couldn't help but giggle. Wow, I beat Sora! She smiled playfully at him. A chuckle Riku couldn't hold in escaped his mouth. See? You're learning! I did the same thing in my first race. A cocky look spread across his face. I'm sure you'll beat me one day. Over the next year, the boy continued to help his friends train alongside the other island kids. Life was relatively simple until he turned 15. He'd been fixated on finding Kairi, letting his one-track mind stupidly guide him to Maleficent's side. Nowadays, Riku could only frown in displeasure as he thought about how immature he had acted towards Sora about finding Kairi, and how he had treated him as well. Refocusing on the present, Riku pondered to himself. Yeah, it was a bad experience, but one that helped me become the person I am today. As much as I wish I could redo things, it happened for a reason. I'll make sure to continue learning from that. And I'll be better for my friends as well as myself. Riku! Master Riku! The calls of his name caught his attention. He turned around to see his 6 students standing in front of him. Are you alright, Master Riku? One of his young Keyblade students asked. Yes, I am. I was thinking about my own training and the path I took to become a master. Ooh, can you tell us that story? A student asked. I will, but another time. Right now, we're gonna practice some basics. Alright, we'll hold you to that. Another student said as they all hurried off to the training grounds. Riku followed his students to the training ground and stood atop a rock just like he did when he was younger. Today, we're going to see who can land a hit on me. I want each of you to try and hit me, one at a time, while the others watch and study. If you land a hit, you get a snack, and if you don't, you can work on making a raft like I did when I was a kid. he teased with a slight smirk. His students tried their best to hit Riku, but none of them were successful. They groaned, knowing they had to work on building a raft. Alright, how about we try it again? I'm sure you can do it this time. Riku stood ready to defend their attacks. It took some time for his students to hit him, but eventually all 6 of them landed a strike. He was proud of them all for not giving up. That was great. You kept going. And that's what made this a good learning experience.
Jeez, when did everyone get so busy? Sora sighed as he laid on the sand. It'd be tedious to brush off later if he was careless, but the weather was perfect for some morning sunbathing, and he couldn't ignore the urge. It would be worth the annoyance later. Sure, he wasn't a hard worker by nature, but he could pull himself together when needed. After getting up and brushing the grains off as best he could, he strolled back to his house, greeting anyone he passed by. The air felt so light, and the sound of the waves so soothing that it was easy to understand how much he had missed it. When Sora arrived, he shook the sand off his feet and slippers, though if a few grains got in between the floorboards, who'd notice? If anything, his scapegoat would be his dad, who was also prone to making a mess the moment he stepped inside. "It's gonna get boring soon," he grumbled. "What am I gonna do on my own?" After going through his options, he decided that he'd do some cleaning. His mom had gone on and on about how he needed more space for the new stuff he'd gotten. That led him to his current position. Sitting across from him on the floor was a box labeled Toys with shaky handwriting. Sora wrote it when he was around 12 after getting grounded for a prank that went a little out of hand. So what if he had gone along with it? Kairi came up with the idea. Scaring the other kids by pretending to be ghosts wasn't a great decision per se, but it did make for a great learning experience in the long run. Sora chuckled as he opened the box. The first thing that caught his eye was a clump of tangled plastic. The neons were tacky, but charming. The way the poor toy had wrapped around itself made him cringe. It looked like an avant-garde puzzle. Through some miracle or hard-earned skill, he managed to untangle the slinky after about 20 minutes. Not that it'd be old-looking when it hadn't been a decade, but it sure felt like it'd been ages. He remembered the times when he and the others would set it loose on random flights of stairs out in the town. Kids were so easily entertained by just about anything. At least, Sora was. Setting it aside, he sifted through the box, pulling out all sorts of trinkets. Finger skateboards, cheap water guns, magnetic capsules with character faces, each one with specific memories tied to them. There was even that cowboy figure that Riku got him when they were both in their Western flicks phase. To think that Sora would meet a living, breathing cowboy, even if he was a toy, sometime down the line. Funny how life works sometimes. At the bottom was a worn box that apparently contained a wooden toy boat. He'd gotten this from Kairi's dad as a birthday present ages ago, earning envy due to the quality of the wood. He took it out, opening the side and revealing the still pristine boat. As a kid who was notorious for losing and breaking things out of childish impulse, even Sora knew that it had to be treated with care. This was worth keeping. The raft suddenly came to mind. It had been so shoddy in comparison, yet he loved it. The material gathering, the tying of the logs and sail, the jokes and sunsets. Though he hadn't had the same fervent ambition that Riku did, there was still that urge to see what was out there. The wish to go on an adventure, to go out and about freely with no supervision like the adults did. He'd gotten what he wanted, but surprise, surprise, that meant being responsible and having to struggle on your own. Not to say the journey he'd gone on hadn't been amazing. It was a necessary one that took him to all kinds of places. He got to meet new friends he'd never dream of living without. Through it all, he wouldn't stop his past self from jumping out that window to run into the storm that fateful night. Everything happened for a reason, and even if he had been stained by grief and regret, if he hadn't made the choices he did back then, he shook his head. Putting the boat on his desk, he smiled. There really was no place like home.